channel. My name is Lena. I have not done a sit-down video in a while, so it feels really good to be back in front of my ear wall talking to you about Disney World. If you've been following my channel, you will know that I took a solo trip back in September. It was just 3 days, just me, and I had a great time. So I thought I would break down the cost of that trip for you. If this is something you're interested in doing yourself, I find it really helpful to know how to budget and to think and come up with some cost-saving options when going on a trip like this, because when you're not splitting the cost of your room with multiple people on the trip, it's exponentially more expensive. So it's very doable. There are some ways to save money. So I'm going to go through everything that I paid for on this 3-day trip. If you haven't already seen those videos, I will link the first day of that trip up above, and you can watch through that series. It's 4 videos. Those are already all uploaded, so go ahead and take a look at that. That'll make a little more sense on some of the things I'm talking about and the money I spent if you go ahead and watch those other videos first. So do that, and then come back here, and I'm going to go through and break down the money I spent for the entirety of this 3-day trip, because the money did add up. To kick things off, we're going to start with the cost of my air travel. If I'm looking down, it's because I have my laptop with a spreadsheet with all of my costs. So first thing is air travel. To save money, and because of various flight credits that I already had, I flew 2 different airlines. I took Southwest down to Florida and then flew United back. On Southwest, getting down to Florida, I only spent $5.60 because I had enough miles from previous travel. I had been saving those for a while, and so I only had to pay the taxes on that trip. I did not pay anything out of pocket for my flight down to Florida on Southwest. On the way back, I flew United because I had a previously canceled trip and had credits that I had to use before they expired at the end of the year. I am not counting that flight credit in the total cost for my trip. I'm only counting my out-of-pocket costs, so I had to pay a little beyond my extra credit, and that totaled $28.93. This is not a cost-saving option that will work for everyone, but if you seem to travel for work, if you go down to Florida fairly often, miles on most airlines never expire. So on my Southwest miles, I've been saving those since I started traveling back in high school 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they've just slowly accumulated over time. And with the combination of my work travel, I was able to get just enough miles for a one-way trip down. So if you can sign up for frequent flyer miles, I always recommend it. It never costs anything. You might as well start stockpiling so that you can take a trip like this. And not everyone's gonna have flight credit to use on trips like this, but if you still have some hanging around from COVID, don't be afraid to fly 2 different airlines back and forth. It can save you money. So out of pocket for this trip, I only spent $34.53 on my air travel. Huge cost savings. That could have costed me $200, and I usually fly budget to get down. I didn't have to this time, which was super nice. So normally I try to fly down for about $150 round trip, and I could do it for even cheaper this time. So flying by myself, that was a really huge savings. So the biggest chunk of money came from my hotel. I did stay at a Disney Deluxe resort this time around. I stayed at Saratoga Springs for the very first time. I've talked about this on my channel before, but my biggest cost-saving hack is renting DVC points, and that's exactly how I got this room. Last time I did this, I booked through David's DVC rental. I will link them below. I didn't have as much luck with them this time because it was a shorter trip. A lot of the DVC rental websites want you to rent a larger sum of points, but in a ton of research, I found Book DVC, not sponsored. They don't know of me. I've never booked through them before. This was the very first time. I will also link them down below. I had no problems renting my points with them. It was such a smooth transaction. The room was booked within 2 days. If you don't know what renting DVC points is, I have a how-to video that I posted about a year ago, and I will link that up above so that you can figure out how to do this for yourself. I'm not going to go into those details now. But for my room at Saratoga Springs, I spent a total of $355 for both nights. That's $177.50 per night, which is a massive savings if I decided to book through Disney. That is equivalent to a value resort. So I felt like it was worth it to spend the money. That was really the purpose of me taking this trip, was to stay in a new hotel, to kind of just kick back and relax. So I felt like it was worth spending the extra money. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that my parents have a house down there. When I broke down the cost of staying at Disney property with transportation to and from the parks and parking at the parks, versus staying at my parents' house and renting a car or Ubering or whatever, when I compiled all those costs, it was pretty much breaking even, whether it was staying on property or staying at my parents' house, because we have to pay a cleaning fee and parking and whatever. All those factors involved, it was pretty even. So going down by myself, it just made sense to stay on property, especially since that was the intent of this trip. But another cost that was necessary was transportation to and from the airport. Ubers can get really expensive, especially if I'm just paying for it on my own. They're about $50 to $70 one way, depending on surge pricing and my arrival and departure times. So I booked with Mears Connect. I've never booked with them before, but I had great success with them. They were on time. It was just a smooth transaction, and it was $32 total round trip for both legs of my trip. So that was a really great value for me traveling alone. Is that a great value for families? Not necessarily. Uber's probably your best bet, but I can dig into that in another video if you want to learn more about my experience with Mears Connect. So my total as far as hotel costs was $387 even. Next is money spent on my park ticket. I only did one park day, but it was a park hopper. That is your most expensive price point as far as tickets go. So for my one day in the park with tax, I paid $185.31. That is rather pricey. If you've got an annual pass, obviously that'll save you money. If you didn't park hop, that's another way to cut costs. But as far as park tickets and saving money, there's really no way to go about it, because I always recommend buying your ticket directly through Disney. You don't want to run into any issues with third parties. I wouldn't recommend that. So there's really no way to cut those costs, so just keep that in mind as you plan your trip. But I did do the park hopper because that's what was important to me this trip. But then the other additional cost that I had is I paid for the Lightning Lane to ride Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, because I didn't want to miss that on this trip. That did cost me $14.91. So the money spent just on the park itself was $200.22 for one day. My largest category was food. I spent a ton on food. I did not intend to spend quite this much money on my food. I had a few sit-down meals, and I spent more than I was originally going to let myself spend. I'm just going to throw a screenshot of my spreadsheet with each cost broken down for the places that I went. If you watch those videos of the trip previously, you will see along the way what food I was eating. I don't feel the need to break that down and spend 20 minutes telling you about all that. But in total, I spent $224.62 on food. Now, I am missing the receipt for one of my restaurants, but guesstimated, if I remember correctly, I spent that much at Boma, if you look at that spreadsheet. Included in that breakdown, I do have snacks and meals purchased at the airport. There was coffee purchased the morning that I flew out. I got water and a snack as I was leaving Orlando, and then at my layover in Chicago I did stop at McDonald's, so you'll see those in the middle of that spreadsheet. And then I did have 3 special meal experiences. I did California Grill, which was rather pricey. I did Oga's Cantina. That's what's Black Spire Outpost on here, is Oga's Cantina, and that was beverages that cost me more. And then Boma, I did a breakfast buffet, and that cost a little more. So if you decided to go on a trip like this yourself, you can cut costs as far as food and do only quick service, but I like to have those meal experiences. I treated myself more than I normally do, so food was a little more than I had originally intended, but I don't regret spending any of that money. And the only 2 other things that I purchased on this trip was a gift. I bought my mom a Christmas gift on this trip that cost me $26.61. And then also parking at the airport was another $15. Parking at the Columbus airport, which is my local airport, is very inexpensive. We've got a $5 a day lot, and so you might have to estimate more on that depending on where you're located, but that does factor into the price of the trip. If you can get someone to drop you off at the airport, even better. So looking at this breakdown, it's a really simple breakdown. I don't spend too heavy on souvenirs. I buy more on Shop Disney, like in between my trips, than I do on the trips themselves. So I'm not a big souvenir girl. I don't have any sort of what I bought on my trip haul, because I would rather spend my money on food while in the parks, which is why that was a bigger expense for me. But between saving money on my flight and on my hotel room, I'm really not too mad about how much I spent on this trip. If you've been adding it up along the way, my grand total was $887.98. That was a little shocking to me as I added it up, because my goal was around $600, but when you count all the food that I had to purchase, parking is inevitable. Park tickets, they add up. They get really expensive, and there's nothing you can do about those costs. So for me to go on a 3-day really relaxing trip, I'm really happy that I kept it under $1,000. I'm not one who can go every few months and spend this kind of money, so as a once in a while kind of splurge, I'm happy to take a solo trip. This will not be my last one. I will do another. There's not one coming up in 2023. I've got other big plans going on, but this was a really good time to go. September is the cheapest time of year to visit the Disney parks, so keep that in mind as you're booking your trip. February and September are your cheapest, with September being the cheapest. So all in all, it was worth every penny to me. It's been so much fun editing these videos after the fact and kind of reliving this trip. I have no regrets. So if this is something you want to do, absolutely, it's very doable price-wise. If you have some extra money and you want to do a solo trip, I will every single day recommend this to anyone who wants to do it. So if you have questions about my solo trip or want to learn more, go ahead and leave that down in the comments. I am happy to share more about details and do a Q&A and answer questions, and anything that you want to talk about, I'm happy to share. So leave that down in the comments below. But I think that covers everything. Super simple. I didn't have any crazy stories. Nothing really went down. No emergency expenses, so I'm super grateful about that. But thank you so much for watching, for tuning in. Thanks for watching me throughout this solo trip adventure. I had a great time. I can't say enough good things, as you already can tell from my 15 minutes of raving about this. So thank you so much. Give this video a big thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. Tune in. Coming in 2023, there's going to be some really good stuff coming up this year. I can't wait to share it with you guys. Have a great day. Have a great year. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone.